Anyway, so Aaron, so essentially, so there is I believe humbly there is a cogent argument for the miraculous nature of the Quran, which is formally based on language and linguistics. The site, the inimitablequran.com, does detail that. I'm happy to exchange kind of like arguments and contentions to that, and I'm happy to proceed that forward maybe another time. But the argument was summarized in our discussion. So the summary that I come up to and is like I've been given this handful of people, say half a dozen or so people, and they're all giving me completely different opinions about what I have to do to be saved from this imaginary damnation. A damnation which logically would not exist except in the story of a liar. Now, because I do not wish to be deceived, I am, of course, going to be a little reserved. Nor do I want to deceive myself. So I will hold that any one of these guys could have been correct. All of them claim absolute truth. So at a maximum, only one of them can be right, and all the others are going to be wrong.
Yep.
So whichever one happens to be right, it seems that I am almost certainly going to be damned to burn forever by a being of ultimate intelligence and love who somehow can neither understand nor forgive the situation in which I could not believe the least credible, illiterate person possible. Does that sound remotely intelligent or fair or divine to you?
To be honest, most of your argument is emotional.
None of my argument is emotional.
It is, because it's not logically coherent to
you're right.
Divine being that will punish
Hamza, you say it's emotional.
Yeah.
Right? Identify specifically what Owen has said that is not factual.
Okay, the reason I'm saying it's emotional because it's not logically incoherent for there to be a divine being that will punish you if, as a result of giving you a message, you deny it.
No, that is logically incoherent.
Why is that logically incoherent?
Because, as I already explained, the only thing in the universe that either requires or desires faith is a bad liar. If it exists, if it's real, if it's real and genuine and sincere, and also maintains the capacity for omniscience, it doesn't even have to be omniscience. It could be any intelligence, average and above, okay, in its understanding of the scenario around it, and its compassion. It could be normal human compassion. It doesn't have to be all love. Such a being with moderate intelligence and reasonable human compassion would not allow the damnation you're talking about, especially not for the trite, pitiful, tiny little reasons that religions always give it. Such a being would not permit hell or damnation to exist. At the worst, it would allow us to just die forever, permanently, like we're supposed to.
Okay. But there's a few assumptions there.
What assumptions?
The first assumption there is when you said faith. I really specifically mentioned in my statement that is as a result of denying a message that someone has been given you, that in the Quran mentions dalil burhan, which basically means conclusive proof, that whatever constitutes proof for yourself. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you still haven't mentioned anything logically compatible, because what you've done is an analogy, and the analogy is weak. Like if you read about David, it's weak.
I didn't give you an analogy.
Of human compassion, and you're
it wasn't an analogy. That was not an analogy. So you're talking about something that has infinite intelligence and infinite compassion and infinite everything. No, It doesn't have to be infinite all those things in every direction one can hallucinate or exaggerate. It can only be modern, normal, reasonable intelligence. As long as it's not completely stupid, it would not permit hell. And I'm not giving an analogy, and I'm not making an assumption. This is just reasonable.
What I think is interesting, I think a more interesting point is this, because obviously there are certain sides of this debate that do not accept that hell exists and burning in hell for eternity actually happens. But Hamza, may I ask you this?
Yep.
In the Quran, you would have to accept that hell is described, hell does exist, people are sent to hell, yes?
Yes.
Right. Do you think that that is fair? Not what the Quran says. What do you personally think?
I think that's fair, yeah.
You believe it's fair that your parents, tomorrow, in a car crash, roasting forever, and you're in heaven. Can you even enjoy heaven knowing that that's going on?
Well, from an Islamic perspective, right, we don't make specific judgments on people. We're not allowed to do that in our theology. We can't say, for example, if you die tomorrow, Aaron, God forbid you do, yeah, but say you do die tomorrow, I could not even say you are going to hell. We're not allowed to pass that judgment in our theology.
Okay, then answer the question I asked you back in Dublin. Is it possible for a non-believer to be saved?
Is it possible for a non-believer to be saved? In the Islamic tradition, someone who hasn't been given the message who hasn't been given the message, there's a possibility, yeah.
Okay, so you have deprived me of any possibility of survival then. So
yes, I have, yeah.
In your religion, is it possible for me, as a reasonable non-believer who does not make assumptions, is it possible for me to be saved?
Well, after being given the message.
Right, so you gave your parents the message too, right?
Well, yeah, I'm continuing to do that as well.
Okay, so if you can't convince me for probably entirely different reasons that you couldn't convince them, I'm just guessing.
Well, I think we can. If we stick to one question, we have an hour per question.
Well, okay, I promise you, having already been down that road, having an hour per question, it doesn't matter. I will eventually show that certain interpretations are incorrect, certain facts are misrepresented, and certain other facts are actually real that you said didn't even get their foot in the door.
Aaron, can I pose something to you?
What's that?
If I came to Texas, would you have a coffee with me in a coffee shop?
Yes.